Hey there, welcome to Authentically Raw. I'm your host, Jamie Berris. Hello, Juliana Glory, and welcome to the Authentically Raw podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you have quite an impressive bio. I spent a long time just on your website reading through, and I'm going to have to really kind of hold myself back because I have so many questions and you have so many stories. And not only that, but I felt as if when I was reading through, it was just the I relate, me too, me too. And even though your story is probably way different than mine and a lot of the readers, we can all relate to so much. So tell me a little bit about Juliana. Who are you and what do you do?
Well, I grew up in Malaysia, a very small town in Malaysia. I'm from a typical Indian family, and I'm a first generation Indian. And if anyone's listening and they're Indians, then they know how the culture is. And after that, I got married right after university, and we moved around. My husband and I moved around a lot, and people are gonna go, "Wow, she's so lucky." Yeah, we'll get to that later. But to cut it short, I am a counselor, and I found my passion to help people long time ago. But counseling wasn't feeding me enough, so I changed to a coach because it's much more uplifting. But I couldn't leave my counseling behind because it was such a big part of me. So I kind of combine counseling and coaching now to help my clients. So that's what I am.
So tell me, what kind of a coach? Is there a certain niche that you have? Who do you mostly see and what for?
I mostly see women in their 30s to 40s. This is a specific period that I touch on because this is the time when people tend to have gone through marriage and they are trying to figure out who they are, and they're burdened by everyone else. They have kids, they have their husband's needs, and they have all these things that they need to tend to, and you have so little time for yourself, and you always have this inner voice in you that says, there's something more to life than this, there's something more. So my clients are mostly women who have gone through a certain phase of life, and they find themselves stuck, and they find themselves self-sabotaging. They can't move forward, and they kind of find themselves like they have all these things. They have a perfect husband, perfect family, and yet there's something missing deep inside. So it's my job to go dig what it's missing.
Mhm. And do you find that your clients often feel guilty for feeling like something's missing because, you look at your life and, I appreciate this, I'm grateful for that. Why do I feel guilty for wanting more or wanting different? Can I just be satisfied and happy, with the way things are? Do you find that people come to you, like, what is their number one? I shouldn't say number one, but I feel a lot of people, whether it's 30s, 40s, 50s, or whatever, you almost lose your identity a little bit as a female because you are often that caregiver, whether you have kids or not, right? If you're married or in a partnership, you have all these relationships, whether it's with a partner or your friends, your coworkers, whether it's children, nieces, nephews, and we often do fall into that role of caregiver. And as the years go on, you do lose yourself and your identity a little bit, and all of a sudden feel guilty for wanting that back and so lost.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah. How do you think, or when people come to you, maybe that's the question I want to ask. When people come to you, what stage are they usually in? What do you first hear come out of their mouth?
Usually, what they say is, well, I haven't gone through much in life. There's really nothing wrong, but there's something nudging at the back of my head that I should be doing.
Mhm.
That is one of the people that comes to me. But most of them that come to me have different kind of problems. Like in workplace, they find it very difficult to voice out their problems. I had a client that came to me. She was very successful, but she came to me and she was so broken. The moment
Mhm.
she opened her mouth, she was so broken, and she said her workers kind of subordinates are bullying her boss is bullying her, and she can never stand up for herself. So
Mhm.
she had so much in her, but and yet she couldn't really be her at
Mhm.
workplace. So it's like they put up a front in a public place, and they kind of feel guilty for the main thing that they feel guilty is that they can't be themselves. At the
Mhm.
bottom of all this is that that's the feeling that they can't be themselves when it
Mhm.
comes to crises, especially. And I
Mhm.
love this kind of clients because there's a reason why you can't stand up for yourself. Usually, that is it's much deeper than what it shows. This
Mhm.
self-sabotaging, people pleasing, and not being able to say no. These are like symptoms.
Mhm.
They're just symptoms. They're not the cause of anything. The cause is much deeper. So this is kind of like when I combine my counseling skills and my coaching skills and get to the roots of things.
Mhm.
Does that
Definitely.
answer?
And I think that's what's hard is because often we're not aware of the patterns that we do. And sometimes we are, but we don't know how to get ourselves out because like you said, it's those are more of the symptoms. We don't know the real deep seated reason of, why can't I stand up for myself? Why do I have such weak boundaries? Why can't I say no? Why am I a chronic people pleaser?
Oh,
Right?
why? Why? A lot of
Why?
whys.
And I want to get into all that. But okay, I'm really curious because just looking at your website, and I think let's go back a little bit before we kind of get into that, because there's a reason you, after, doing counseling, how long were you in counseling before you kind of converted over to more of the coaching? I know you use the counseling in the coaching, but how many years?
I was a counselor for 3 years.
Okay. And
Yeah.
obviously there was that nudge in you. Let's turn it over to coaching. And I agree. It's more empowering and it's okay, here's where you are. Let's figure out what it is and let's not stay stuck and let's move forward. And I love
Yeah.
that about the coaching as well. Let's go forward. Let's figure this out and move forward. But you too were stuck for a time and you had to basically go inward and do this work on yourself to get
Yeah.
to a different place. And I kind of laughed. There's two little stories that really stick out that I want you to comment on. And the first is you truly believed that you were found in a trash bin because that's what your brother told you growing up. Tell me about that a little bit. I need to know this story. Don't we all have these childhood stories?
Oh, my sister didn't realize how much it traumatized me. I truly believed my father picked me up from a trash bin because I looked different than the rest of them. And I was hypersensitive growing up, and I still am. And it was all wrong. Culturally, it was wrong for me to express myself, to be sensitive, to even get hurt. It was wrong. So I looked around, and my siblings, we are five of us. I'm the youngest.
Mhm.
So I had to compare myself with the grown-ups most of the time. And my sister used to joke that, oh, you look different because we kind of picked you out from the trash can. And I really believed it at some point. I should tell her that story now.
Right. Yeah. For a long time, I really truly believe that. I think that must be, I'm the youngest and my family too. And I feel like that is almost the duty of the older siblings, right? To tell the younger ones they were
Oh,
adopted
yeah.
because I'm a mom of four. And I'm like, you know what? My older ones do that to my younger ones too. So it's, but, so fast forward, you found yourself in a marriage and you're traveling all these different countries and until you didn't. So I'm going to let you tell the story, your story.
Okay. I didn't find myself in the marriage because I grew up so suppressed. Even when it came to picking a course for university, I had to pick something that would please my parents. I was a people pleaser from the beginning. I did everything to please my parents and my family. And when it was time, I was the first one to go to university in my family. So you can imagine the burden that I carried. And I wanted to do counseling. And they said no, because in Malaysia, counseling is still like taboo. You don't talk about your feelings. It's
Mhm.
coming up now. It has changed now. This was 20 years ago. And
Mhm.
I had to do business. I hated every moment of it. I seriously hated doing business. There's nothing wrong with business, but my brain doesn't work like that. But I graduated, and after that, I married my one of my colleagues, and he brought me to Russia. And the marriage was the marriage kind of ended before it started actually, but I loved him so much. I stuck to him, and my I don't blame him for anything that happened, but it was my lack of confidence, my people pleasing that actually enabled him to do everything that happened later on.
Mhm.
And so that's a healing thought for me to realize that there is more to me. I kind of enabled it. So it helped me forgive him and move rather than carrying that weight in me.
Mhm.
So fast forward, I was in Russia and then I was in Romania. I'm still married to the same man.
Okay.
I
Are still married. Okay. Okay.
yeah. And in Romania, I had two kids, and I didn't speak the language. I didn't have any friends, so I was stuck in the house all the time. And when my kids started going to school, I realized that I was sticking out. I was not making friends. It was me. I always looked down, and whenever I walk, I was looking at the ground. It was like I was very ashamed to make eye contact with people because I was very scared that they would see I was broken.
Mm.
And this was going on for some time until in Africa, I went to Ghana and the people there looked at me so differently. They looked at me like I was a goddess from heaven or something.
Mhm.
And I was in an elevator once. I was just me. And this guy came in and he said, "Wow, you're a very beautiful woman." And I was like, "What?" And
Mhm.
he said, "Yeah, you are." I said, "You have beautiful women in your country." And he was like, "No, no one is like you."
Wow.
And yeah, so I appreciate that in Ghana because the people are very vocal. And I got something that I didn't get in my own home country, the acceptance. And
Mhm.
that changed me. That is what truly changed me and the way I looked at myself. And then I started educating myself more. And the education, the knowledge of what had happened to me, the trauma that had happened to me, and how to heal them, that was the process that has brought me here.
Mhm. So, when did you switch then from business over to the counseling? How did that happen? Because, and I feel like a lot of women fall into that trap where you felt it inside. You hated every minute of the business, but you did it anyway to please other
Yeah.
people. And it's not uncommon. And then all of a sudden we wake up years and years later and look at our life and think, wow, who am I? And you're kind of resentful or angry or whatever because you're living not for you, you're living for other people. And then what? And I that, but also too, if you don't mind, when you speak of trauma, because I think a lot of people have a hard time saying the word trauma because it almost feels, what's the word? You help me out here as a counselor. I just feel like that's a hard word for people to say, but we all have it, whether it's big
Yeah.
T's or a million
Yeah.
little T's. And how does that affect us? How does it keep us stuck?
Well, when you go through life and you have that's this famous saying by Buddha that says we are 10% of what's that? Life is 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how we react to it. And that is like the definition for trauma. Trauma is not what happens to you, it's how you react to it. So the same thing could happen to you and me, and we both would react to it differently. And trauma is about how we react to it. And why trauma makes people stuck is that when trauma happens, it kind of programs your brain in a certain way that it is always in hypervigilance. It's always very careful of what you say, how you look, and it's always looking out for threat. We are human beings that we operate on survival mode. It's what saved us when we were cavemen, but now it reacts to trauma. So when I say someone is traumatized, if it's okay, I can explain how your brain reacts.
Yes, please.
There are three parts of the brain that's involved in trauma. When trauma happens, what happens is this part at the back called the amygdala, it sends signal to react, and that's when you go on the flight, freeze, and the other one.
Fight, flight, freeze, or well, I like to say the fawn a lot.
The three F's.
Yeah.
And so trauma affects this amygdala and the peripheral cortex is how we react. So every time something similar happens to you, like I had a client who is a successful guy who works in a multinational company. He is very successful, but he came to me because he found himself after 20 years of job, he was shutting down in meetings. He couldn't voice out, he couldn't talk. That has never happened to him before. As we dug more and more, we realized that his current boss in his new job, actually sounded like his dad. And his dad was an abusive man. So whenever the boss speaks, the amygdala sends signal to the peripheral cortex to shut down, go to survival mode. And he reacts like that because the peripheral cortex doesn't heal anything. For you to heal, you need to send the message to your hippocampus for long-term memory. So what happens is that these two get stuck when you are in trauma. It doesn't send signal that it's okay, you are grown up now, you can face it now. That signal never got to your brain. So you are stuck at that position. Every time something triggers you, it happens inside of you. It's not the outside thing that triggers you. The trigger comes from inside and you react. Your brain reacts. Sometimes you react even without knowing why you're reacting like that.
So true. And I think without that self-awareness, it's really hard to make any changes because that is just your body's way of keeping you safe. And when we were saying the fight, flight, freeze, those three, but I've added on or people please, which to me, the fight, flight, freeze, people please, the people please is almost like this big, for me, this is the way I label it. It's like my combustion of the fight, flight, freeze all at once. If I just, or it's like a ping pong ball going between all of them. And I just people please, it takes care of it all, right? Because like the guy you were talking about, it's that triggered something. And he probably didn't even relate those two together until you helped him do that. And I feel like that could be all day long. Things trigger people even when you're driving down the road, right? Like road rage. What is triggering that? Or all kinds of things.
Yeah,
It's fascinating.
yeah, that's exactly what led me to become a trauma coach, because not just my life experience led it, but my fascination about how your brain works. But the best part is you can change this. Most people don't know that you can change this. And
Mhm.
it's your brain learns new things. It's not like you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but you can always teach your brain new tricks.
Yeah. And in simple terms, it's the rewiring your brain, but most
Yeah.
people don't understand that it's possible. And it's tough just to, okay, you're going to wake up one day and I'm going to do this on my own. And I look at, and it's not just women. I mean, it's men too that get stuck in the
Yeah.
traps of, I mean, we all have triggers, we all have things that make us who we are today. And a lot of it, though, can be used for good, but I liked that you pointed on it's the problem isn't out there
Yeah.
because it's easy to do that. I'm not saying that there's not problematic people or problematic situations. Of course there is. That's just life. But the real problem is internal because we don't know, it's like this wiring of our brain is so already fixed maybe and it can be changed, but we don't know how to change that. And so that is why we
Yes.
get stuck in these patterns. And I
Yes.
wrote down, I got this off of your website and I want you to explain a little bit of this. I found this interesting how we overwork, we overeat, we overexercise. And I mean, I kind of added on there. It's just like we overplease, overachieve, like all of this, but so often never feel satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially just in our society today where it's the do more, be more, it's exhausting. And so but we're never satisfied. It's just, how do you approach that?
Because the overeating, the overexercising, and overdoing things, it's a symptom like people pleasing. You overdo things, and the reason why you don't reach a level of satisfaction is because you're doing it for all the wrong reason, and your brain is not looking at it like that. So when I get a client that is actually doing that, it's very easy to spot them. And we go through this process where you recognize it first. For you to recognize, you need to dig deep. So I kind of have these four pillars that we do. You have to recognize what you're going through first, why it's happening to you, and it's not your fault.
Mhm.
And this itself is quite a long process, because this is going to create the foundation awareness where you will never turn back from this awareness. You would be aware of yourself. The moment you can look in the mirror and see yourself. So we have a few exercises that we do for that. And the moment you can look in the mirror and see yourself, you will see that all this that you're doing is actually harming you. The
Mhm.
reason you get stuck in this vicious cycle of doing things endlessly is because you don't see how it's affecting you. You just don't see yourself. You don't feel good enough. The feeling
Mhm.
of not good enough comes from trauma, the cycle of brain, how it's wired. And we need to change the wiring of it. And you need to create memory that it's okay, you're okay. And for that, you have to go through healing, you have to go through self-acceptance. And yeah,
Mhm.
I kind of went through all those things. So
Mhm.
it's very rewarding for me to do it for a client and for them to see themselves for the first time. Some people
Mhm.
go through life not seeing themselves at all. It took me like 30 years to see myself in the mirror and see, oh, this is how I look like. Okay.
Yeah, right. But I think
We,
that self-awareness is it? Maybe that's my question. Is self-awareness the first step?
yes, self
Mhm.
awareness is definitely the first step. Recognizing and being aware of what is going on with you. is the first step, and where it's coming from is the first step. Before you can heal anything, you need to know what's going on and where it's coming from.
Mhm. And I think the hard thing is too is there's so much out there. I'm going to use, say, positive affirmations
Hmm.
as an example, because, and I do feel like, your thoughts really do create your reality. But so often it's just, we'll just think positive thoughts and then you'll have this great life. Because if you think positive thoughts, your reality will be, positive, and you'll be happy and all your problems will go away. And I just feel like that can be so toxic because it's just simply not true.
That's so
Yeah.
true. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because
Talk on that, because that's really big out there in the self-development, and
yeah,
explain that process.
that for me is a very shallow way of looking at things. And let me just ask you, how long does this feeling of self of affirmation actually work? It Yes, it works for a while, but after that you kind of fall back into that cycle again. You kind of pick up where you left and you go on doing the thing. And then you try to self affirm something positive and you feel good for a day, maybe two. And then what happens? So this is the vicious cycle that I was talking about. You kind of find self affirmation is like a shortcut and a quick fix for what is really going on with you. And
Mhm.
it's really a quick fix. It doesn't last long.
And I think often we then feel bad or guilty because we don't really believe what we're trying to convince ourselves, with these positive
Yeah.
affirmations. And it, yeah, you almost feel worse, not better. And I like the term, calling it more of like empowered knowledge. And that's more digging deep and taking, say, like a positive affirmation. I'm confident. That popped into my head, because you can look in the mirror and say, I'm confident, I'm confident, I'm confident every day, and just feel worse about yourself because it's not working, right? And then you feel more insecure because of that. It's not working. See, I can't do, and this whole spiral of what's going in your head. So, what does someone do differently then when these affirmations aren't working? Then, because I think that's where most people get stuck, is even if you're self-aware, okay, I have these self-sabotaging patterns going on. I'm a people
Hmm.
pleaser. I
Hmm.
overdo everything. I'm exhausted. I feel stuck. Maybe it's just I've given my identity away. I've created this mold in this life for myself that was really not what I wanted. It wasn't what I wanted to do. Maybe it was to please our parents, when we're fresh out of high school, to go whatever route that we felt pushed into, or maybe later in life to please a partner or kids or whatever. So when you find yourself feeling kind of like, okay, what is my purpose anymore? I don't know who I am anymore. I'm feeling all these things. I bow down. I can't speak up. I can't defend myself. I can't say no. I can't have these boundaries. I can't state my opinion. I mean, I know I'm going on, but I want to cover, because so many people deal with this. And the big one word question is like, how? How? Where do I get out? How do I begin?
That's a really big how, because
Mhm.
the process starts. The first reason why self affirmation doesn't work is because we react to things mostly. How we react to things depends on our inner voice, and our inner voice is highly influenced by our life traumas.
Mhm.
And if you don't change the inner voice, the self affirmation is not going to work. It's not that self affirmation doesn't work entirely, it does, but after you reach a certain level at your healing, yes, it's quite powerful to have this as a maintenance, but not as a solution.
Mhm. I
So,
Oh, go ahead.
so why it doesn't work is because you haven't changed your inner voice. Your inner voice is way more powerful than anything. It's like It's like, have you heard of the story about how baby elephants are trained? It's quite a popular story
No.
about, I'm going to tell you anyway.
Good.
So, if you have seen baby elephants, they tie them with big chunks of chains for them to not run away. So, they would tie them to big, huge trees and they would pull and struggle and pull and struggle for so long. And at some point, they stop pulling. If you see a grown up elephant, they don't pull anymore. They just stand there. It's like they have given up. And this is what your inner voice does to you. So, this big, huge adult elephant has it in his brain that, okay, I've been trying since I was small. It doesn't work. So, why bother? This is his inner voice. But if he tried, I'm sure he could pull and break away.
Mhm.
So if you don't change your inner voice, it will come back, and your inner voice is rooted at your trauma. So this inner voice influence how you do things, how you react, how you see yourself, and how well your self affirmation works.
Mhm. I don't want to be that elephant. And it does make
Sad.
me think though of like our inner critic and
Yeah.
just, whether it's full of self-doubt or just, like self-sabotaging, we hold ourselves back from so many things. I really feel so many people though don't understand or aren't aware, that's a better word, aren't aware of how loud that inner
Hmm.
voice is and how destructive and negative it is
Yeah.
until it's really pointed out and you really start to, I like to say, you really question it. Just be curious of
Yeah.
everything that kind of pops up, really question it. Like, really? I mean, it might sound silly, but it's using your name too, So if something pops up in my head, it's really, Jamie, is that true? And really start to question yourself because so often it's not, but we have all of this floating through our head all the time, and we're not even aware of how negative and destructive it truly is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
So how do we change that voice?
Yeah, but rather than changing the voice, you want to listen to what the voice has to say because this voice is actually coming from a place where it was hurt at some point. And because you didn't heal it, it keeps repeating the same thing. It's actually trying to protect you. It's like a safety device. It's an internal safety device. And this voice doesn't change unless you look at it like, I say, look at it like a little kid. If he's crying, you're not gonna go and ask, why are you crying? You're gonna tend to him with compassion. Compassion is what is gonna heal you, self-compassion. And you discover things when you ask yourself, like you treat your inner voice like a small kid. It'll tell you things.
Mhm. And I think when we're feeling so just not enough, I've got to do more, be more, that we have very little self-compassion for ourselves.
Yeah.
We're pretty hard on ourselves. We are, and it's that inner dialogue that is really, it does, it really does hurt us. And it's a hard thing though, when you've done that your whole life, when you're pretty hard on yourself and you don't have a whole
Yeah.
lot of compassion and grace. That's not just a quick, easy switch.
No,
It
it's
takes a lot
not.
of time.
Well, that's how we are wired most of the time. It's when we are kids, we when you cry and your mom comes and asks you, "Why are you crying?" That itself creates a trauma. That teaches you to suppress things. We
Mhm.
don't realize it, but sometimes it's created way younger. So it's a whole long process, but it's so worth it to heal yourself with compassion.
Mhm.
It
Definitely.
changes everything. It kind of changes you, not just you, the people around you, your kids, generations to come, how you look at people. Not just that it changes you, it kind of helps you look at other people, and when they react, you kind of know, oh, okay, maybe this is why they're reacting like this. It helps you understand others better when you understand yourself better.
Mhm. And I think just watching other people have, self-compassion for themselves and just I did an interview a while ago on kindness and, really asking yourself, are you kind to yourself? Because I don't think sometimes, we just aren't. A lot of us aren't kind and compassionate to ourselves. We don't give ourselves that self-love. And I like to bring up the self-love. It's even more of the question, do I like myself? Because if you really do like yourself, you understand that you you are enough. You are worthy, and you're worthy of, oh boy, how do I wrap this up in like one word? I could say a million, right? And I do, I go off on these tangents of a million words, but it's just showing up and being you. Because when you
Yeah.
are, let's say the people pleasing, for instance, when you're stuck in that people pleasing, you're not being you. You're
Mm-hmm.
being who you think everybody else needs you to be to earn love.
Yeah.
And it is really going, sometimes I almost cringe, because I think a lot of people, it's hard to admit, do I really like myself? Do I really love myself? Because if I did, then it would be easier to just stand up and be you, right?
Yeah, I guess that is easier said than done. Most people don't like who they are and they don't even realize that they don't like who they are.
Right.
The self-awareness never comes for most.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So, Juliana, I know you say it is psychology and coaching is kind of the
Mm.
how, and then mixture of the two of them together. So, if someone is, reaching out to you to be a client, how do you, what does that look like? Because I think so many of us have in mind of, counseling and going to therapy is it's just talking through things. And then when you combine coaching, because there's different aspects of coaching, and coaching is a lot of questioning. It's going in and asking yourself questions. It's getting to know yourself, and it's that moving forward. So what does that look like?
Um, if someone comes to me, we do spend time questioning the roots of things, but at some point they know themselves that they are ready to move forward. And the moving forward, it's not like a linear process. And so what happens is if you are trying to rewire your brain, for example, and you get this negative thought that comes in, we kind of use this. It's like a horse rider back. You kind of go, you kind of pull on the horse when it's going the wrong direction, and you pull it and you go, whoa, you're going the wrong direction. So this comes with self-awareness. For you to use the horseback rider technique, you kind of need to be aware that you're going on the wrong direction. So that's why we recognize first, and then we kind of squeeze in all these techniques as they go on to be aware of their inner voice. When it goes to the bad habits, you pull it to the right one. And we are creatures of habit. So you do it more than a few times. You naturally know when you are swaying back to your cycle and you would keep going the right way. It's like when you're driving your Jeep down a muddy path and that doesn't have any paved road. The road is going to be bumpy and you're going to be jumpy all the way. But if you have actually driven it a few times on the same path, you have these grooves that you follow, and that's exactly how our brain works. So rewiring can easily happen like that just by practice. Just like
Mhm.
how we practice, we believe self-affirmation is going to heal you. Some people believe that it's going to heal them, but it doesn't. But it will keep you on the right track if you heal
Mhm.
yourself.
Yeah, most definitely. Because, and I think that's the thing too, is once you're aware of, I love your Jeep analogy, like say it's the mud or the bumps or whatever that's pulling you off the course. you can recognize, okay, here I'm doing it again. Here I go.
Yeah.
And you can
Yeah.
steer yourself back into the grooves you want to be in, right? Get in your own groove. I like that. That's a great strategy. And I think it's helpful for people to have analogies like that, to recognize, when first what you're doing that's pulling you out of who you are, and then to pull yourself back in. I love that analogy. That's great.
Uh-huh.
Where can people find you and learn more about you?
I have my website that you have spoken so highly about. Thank you for
I
that.
love it. It's fabulous. Everybody needs to check it out. What is your website?
It's www.julianaglorycoaching.com. I
Okay.
think I'll send you a link to it.
Yes, I'll have the link in the show notes. But so you do mostly just one-on-one coaching? Do you do
Yes.
group? What other things do you do? Just one-on-one coaching?
For now, I just do one-on-one coaching, and I also have a summit, a mental health coaches that there are 100 of us that got together, and we are having this summit that's coming up. I can send you the link for that too. And
Awesome.
I'll be presenting in the summit mid-July. It's
Okay.
starting 1st of July.
Okay.
And
So that's just for mental health coaches, or is that for
yeah,
anyone? Just for the
no,
mental health
it's for anyone.
for
Anyone
anyone.
who wants to join and learn. It's an interactive summit where you get to ask questions and you get to learn a topic. So my topic obviously is trauma. And if anyone's interested, it's free. It's free for anyone who wants to attend.
Definitely. Yes, I'll send me the link and I'll put that in the show notes. That sounds great. No, so much to learn and so much to learn about ourselves, because when we learn about ourselves, though, that's how we grow, right? It's how we heal, it's how we transform, and that's an amazing thing. And I'm so thankful for people like you that are out there in the world. It's just, you're such a bright light, and helping other people help themselves is what it truly is. So
Yeah,
we need more
it's very
Juliana.
rewarding.
Well, and I love your last name, Glory, right? It couldn't have been it for sure. Well, thank you so much for being on the Authentically Raw podcast and sharing everything with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me share my thoughts and my ideas. I could
Most
go on talking about trauma for days.
for days. Well, and that's good, because we need to, right? And it's because it's basically, I mean, if you love what you do, you're passionate what you do, you stick to your mission of helping people through their trauma, right? So that's a good thing. Well, it's great talking to you.
You too. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you so much for listening to Authentically Raw. I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email, jamie@jamieberris.com, and let me know what episodes resonate with you and why. Are you a people pleaser? If so, I need your help. Please, I'm writing a book about people pleasing titled The People Pleaser's Guide to Pissing People Off, to improve your relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. And I'm looking for personal stories of how people pleasing has impacted your life, or sucked the life out of you. Maybe people pleasing has held you back, caused you to feel resent, regret, anger, powerlessness, or just plain exhaustion. Let me know how it's impacted your life. Who knows, maybe your story will inspire my writing and grace the pages in some shape or form in this handy dandy little guide. Also, if you enjoy the Authentically Raw content, please support the show by following and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. Simply scroll down through the episodes and you will see where to do so. Want to learn more about life coaching? Head over to my website, jamieberris.com, and check it out. You can also follow me on social media at Jamie Berris for lots of inspiration and empowerment. One last thing, I'm rooting for you. Be real, be raw, be authentic.